The Ottoman Empire, a nation long past its prime. But despite everything it's been through for the past century, they keep going. Against all odds, the Ottoman Empire won World War I, standing alongside a victorious Germany, even if their relationship is now a bit estranged. The Ottomans may have outlasted the British and Russian empires, but that doesn't mean the heat is dying down on them. To the east, their historical rival Persia would be an obvious challenger to their influence in the Middle East, and would take any opportunity to subvert the empire's authority. To the southwest, the newly independent Kingdom of Egypt has been building its army and allying themselves with Arab leaders in an obvious plan to push the Turks out of Arabia for good. So, here we have an unstable empire with enemies who are ready to pounce at any sign of weakness. Things may seem pretty bad for the Ottomans, but they shouldn't worry right now because I'm gonna make it a lot worse in the future. The Ottoman focus tree seems very straightforward at first, but that's because a decent amount of the other choices are hidden. The Ottomans are on the up and up now after recovering from the First World War and are even passing reforms to make the country way better. At least that's how it was until Black Monday hit, threatening to wipe out a decade of growth. Action had to be taken immediately and some tough calls needed to be made. The people are getting rowdy, making members of parliament feel unsafe. People kept asking me to do things to make them feel safer, and some of them I could see where they're coming from, but others left me scratching my head. The Balkan powder keg was looking ready to explode once again with everyone ganking Bulgaria. Again, so they tried to talk me out of joining it. We sat down with them, they offered me some very reasonable concessions for the Turks in Bulgaria, and then I sent them away because I wanted in on the gank. But there would be some speed bumps along the way. The Grand Vizier, while making a speech in the city, was shot by an Armenian man. But despite arresting the assassin, the police couldn't figure out the motive for that Armenian shooter. Grand Vizier Mustafa Kemal Pasha would succumb to his injuries and a successor would need to be appointed. Ismet Pasha was selected as the next Grand Vizier and leader of the party to continue the plan of democratizing the Ottoman people, with the firm hand of the central government and military. This approach did not fill people with confidence that they were on the road to build a healthy democracy, so the situation continued to spiral. Fevzi Pasha, a field marshal and hero of the Weltkrieg, thought now was as good as a time as ever to enter politics. He took over party leadership, and within 3 days, he couped the government. The Fourth Balkan War had popped off, but Fevzi had to secure things internally to stabilize the country against subversive elements. The tribunals of progress were opened up across the country to prosecute those who would stand against our attempt to create a managed democracy in the Ottoman Empire. With this in place, we could safely invade Bulgaria for our rightful land in Thrace. They had barely any troops to stand against us, and after a few weeks, we destroyed a Bulgarian division and occupied the land we wanted. The Bulgarians, understandably, could not handle a forefront war, so they kneeled and offered up Western Thrace to me. Detractors may say that the Ottoman Empire is a bad place to live in right now, but when people are getting out to protest math tests being too hard, how bad can it be really? Fevzi, seeing his job done in stopping the enemies of managed democracy, soon ended the state of emergency. Elections and parliament convening would be allowed very soon, but I gotta take a moment to respect Bulgaria. They took us swiping Western Thrace on the chin and popped off against the Belgrade Pact, embarrassing that attempted gank. Later on in Babylon, there was some dude yapping about how the Assyrian community needed their own levies to protect their people. But here in Constantinople, we believe that all people in that area are equal, beneath us, so our garrisons there should be good enough. This led the Assyrian community to declare independence from us, but looking at the size of their revolt, it wasn't very impressive. This is the first time I've ever used camelry since they added it to the game, and their first taste of action was busting up these Assyrians. Barely had to fight them, I could just walk around their 2 divisions. We get a new political focus tree soon, where we could further centralize state authority, and listen to these guys called Kadjurist, who are, to briefly summarize, basically Turkish Nazbols. Ethnic tensions are getting worse and worse in the Middle East. Anti-Zionist violence becomes so widespread that Jewish immigration to Jerusalem is banned by the local government. In Cyrenaica, an exiled prince of the Senussi order has returned to challenge our rule of Libya. I tried to get my camels there before the revolt triggers, but sadly I don't have enough time and the revolt fired, teleporting those camels back to Constantinople. So they had to sail across the Mediterranean again and hold back the rebels while a naval invasion was planned for Benghazi. The plan went so smoothly, with the port being ungarrisoned, and allowed me to easily encircle the troops while rushing the few spots of civilization in this desert. Back home, after incorporating the Kaiserreich movement in the party, they recommend we set up a committee of inquests to keep the state safe from threats against managed democracy. The first thing this committee will do is prosecute members of other political parties. The Iranians are watching our political struggles and have begun testing our strength by invading the small town of Kasab on the Arab side of the Persian Gulf. I wasn't going to let this aggression slide, so the Ottoman army arrived in force on their border to show that we had plenty of strength to make them regret this. The Iranians ran away, swearing to return, but we secured the town for the Ottoman Empire. The Iranians took another L when their ally, Sheikh Mahmud Berzinji, jumped the gun and led an open revolt against the Ottoman Empire, hoping to inspire all of Kurdistan to rise against us. But nobody took up arms with him, and him starting the revolt right when my army was deployed to fight Iran will go down in history as one of the most questionable decisions of all time. But I guess they were just ahead of the curve, because soon Egypt crossed the Suez to declare war on us. This was the signal to all the rebellious Arabs in the region to revolt, so they rose up in the Levant and invaded from the deep deserts in Arabia. Iran knew an opportunity when they saw it, so they came in to join the gang, but they didn't have the strength to back it up at least. My army on their border was easily able to start pushing them back. This war inspired some help from an unlikely group. Fearing the future of Zionism under Arab rule, they approached me asking to help, and I had to accept it. But my enemies continued to pile up. Armenia rose in revolt, which hurt because I don't even know why they'd want to do that. Followed by Georgia lining up to invade Batum. The cavalry was a great investment though, because they cleaned up the Arab tribes and rebels in no time, so I could quickly contain the Egyptian advance to Palestine. Next, I focused on Armenia and Georgia. With the help of the few biplanes the Ottoman Air Force has, our troops cleared Yerevan of the Armenian rebels. The Georgians, isolated and outnumbered, were definitely regretting their choices now. As the coalition against me was losing steam, more rebels popped off to slow me down, but the fall of Georgia made it very easy to suppress them because it freed up so many troops. Some Arabs tried to sign a separate peace with me, but the fact that they tried to get their independence and some land off of me was laughably delusional. However, I wasn't laughing for long when Bulgaria attacked me to get Western Thrace back. This was a very predictable move that I did not prepare for at all, and now Constantinople is in danger of falling. The troops there had to make do because I needed troops elsewhere to make breakthroughs. Fortunately, after months of grinding against the Egyptian army on the Suez Canal, the cavalry finally made a breakthrough and were threatening Cairo. Soon we took the city and the cavalry were moving up the Nile to exploit any opening they could. Meanwhile in Iran, the Iranian army collapsed and we were just mopping up the remnants. The Russians came to talk to us about the future of the Caucasus, mainly about Georgia, saying it's their rightful territory. Now, I was pretty upset that the Russians would dare ask for that land after thousands died to take that, so I told them to go away. I locked in on Egypt to cross the Nile and finish the country off. But I actually locked in on them too much because Bulgaria managed to take Constantinople since I wasn't paying attention to the siege there. Fortunately, they couldn't cross the strait, so that was the end of Bulgaria's offensive. Egypt knew it was over for them soon, but they surprised me by channeling some Japanese energy by going out with a suicide charge at my divisions. Once the forced attack was over, the survivors wouldn't last long against our final offensive. I pushed across the Nile and sweep the remnants of the Egyptian army to Alexandria for their final stand. Once that city fell, that was the end of the Cairo Pact, and I secured our position in the Middle East. The Kaiserreichs could now advance to the next step of their master plan, merging the party and the state. While this happened, I prepared a naval invasion to secure one of the Bosphorus Strait crossings and retake Constantinople. I launched the invasion, and not gonna lie, it was going disastrously. All those mountaineers were about to die, but fortunately, the focus to merge the party and state finished, causing a mass uprising and Thanos snapping my army and teleporting the mountaineers out of there. Surprisingly, the minorities in the empire were not happy with the social nationalists being the government from here on, so this was their last chance to fight for their freedom. The gang got together for one last gank, and the true Ottoman patriots had to lock in for this fight. One more purge of the non-believers and managed democracy would be safe for good. The Bulgarians cheekily offered me a peace deal, but I wasn't accepting that. They were gonna burn for this. Fortunately, I had all the captured weapon stockpiles from the previous war to rebuild my army, and we pushed east to reclaim the empire. Our enemies weren't even stronger than they were last time, so we swept through Kurdistan and separated Georgia and Armenia from the Arab rebels. Sadly, as we rebuilt our army and established our authority over our land again, I faced an issue with manpower shortages. For some reason, our new government was having trouble getting new recruits, especially in non-Turkish areas. Thankfully, the cavalry was making short work of the rebel forces, so the manpower problem wouldn't hurt us too much. Their speed makes taking out Egypt so much easier because I can outmaneuver their units and get across the Suez Canal without having to grind against their defenses for months. In 1941, the rebel nations started formally surrendering. First, the Cairo Pact 2.0, followed by Iran. There was still some straggling tribes who couldn't accept that they lost, so the cavalry had to go venture to the edges of the empire to rein them in. Finally, it was time to focus on Bulgaria again after a year of ignoring them. I had learned from that failed invasion last year. This time, I was going to use a floating harbor so my troops could last longer than 3 days. When my mountaineers hit the beaches, they quickly spread out to form a beachhead and secure the Gallipoli Peninsula. And they did it just in time because the AI took out the floating harbor and started swarming the landing. The cavalry could finally cross to the west side of the Bosphorus, and the next phase of the liberation of Constantinople could begin. Surrounded, the city was liberated within a week. The Ottoman army came in as heroes, liberating the city from nearly 16 months of Bulgarian oppression. Now it was time to take the fight to Bulgaria proper and march to Sofia. They had occupied our capital, and now it was time to occupy theirs. The cavalry struggle a lot more with the Bulgarians, since surprisingly it's harder fighting a proper army with artillery and modern tactics instead of desert tribals who couldn't tell you what an ocean is. I had to crutch on the mountaineers to make a breakthrough, but once they did, the cavalry could exploit those openings and bust through weak points. The months of stalemating was over in 1942, with the Bulgarians getting completely routed within 2 weeks and Ottoman troops taking the city of Sofia without a fight. Now it was just a matter of cleaning up. The Greeks had been at war with Bulgaria and Albania for a long time, so when it came to the peace deals, we had to split up the land. I arrived to a fair deal. I got all of Bulgaria, and they get most of Albania. Finally, after over 3 straight years of war, the Ottoman Empire was at peace, and the Kaiserreichs could rest and watch the sun rise over a grateful empire. With their control cemented, they could finally implement their vision onto the Ottoman Empire and bring the nation forward in their own way. But although we persevered, I felt bad that my former allies were collapsing to their enemies. I tried to send what help I could, but the situation was looking really dire. When my mountaineers arrived, I focused on small fronts since I only have 2 divisions. Now you may wonder why I only sent 2 divisions to Germany when I could send volunteers to multiple nations and have way more divisions. Shut up! I don't want to hear it. So with my 2 divisions, I would help out on small fronts, first starting with the Syndicalist invasion of Denmark. It definitely wasn't easy because my troops now had to deal with enemy airplanes dropping bombs on them, but the flat terrain combined with the low amount of troops here made it possible to push the Brits back. Eventually, the troops retook the port of Aarhus, cutting off a significant amount of British troops and killing any chance of Denmark falling to the Reds. Once Aalborg was secured, it was time for the Ottoman Volunteer Corps to look west to see where else they could assist. Next, I was gonna deal with the Sindhi strongholds in Holland, but I finished a focus that allowed me to justify my own war, so I started justifying on Greece. I knew time was running out for the Reichspakt when Austria capitulated, but unfortunately, I can't even help them with their equipment needs because my guns can't even reach there anymore. At least my war with Greece went super fast. The Greeks were so exhausted from their war against Bulgaria that they barely had any strength to fight back. All the Greek people could do was accept their fate to be ruled by Turkey once more. After I annexed the Greeks, I came back to Germany ASAP, but the Russian front is just getting worse and worse for them. I try to make some moves in the west so they can send more to the east, but I'm being pretty delusional and thinking 2 mountaineer divisions can change the war. I can't even lend-lease Germany anymore because they blocked off all the sea zones I could send guns through. Eventually, the German lines completely collapse and my volunteers barely escape from Belgium before the Sindis kill them. I had sent some volunteers to Spain to support the Entente, but without Germany, that meant a bunch of Sindhi reinforcements were gonna come pouring through the Pyrenees Mountains. The Entente couldn't handle all the pressure and Spain was rapidly losing land, so I decided it was time for me to directly intervene. I stationed most of my army in Spain and prepared to assist the Entente. But despite Germany being fully occupied, the German government continued on in exile in Middle Africa, but they were running on fumes. The state is slowly falling apart, so I had a time limit to bring Willy III back to Berlin. I couldn't waste time sitting on the defense, so I planned a naval invasion of Brittany to put the Third Internationale on the back foot. Fortunately, my fleet combined with all the others I stole from my enemies was just enough to get me supremacy to invade through the Bay of Biscay. Despite doing something they were not trained for at all, the mountaineers were able to land and secure some ports. After cleaning up Brittany, the Entente and I could send a bunch of reinforcements to prepare to break out of this beachhead. We broke through into Normandy and pushed along the coast because the French didn't have enough troops to stop us. I made it to the outskirts of Paris before the Sindis had reinforced the line enough that I had to take a break and build my planning bonus back up. While I was recovering, my fleet made the ultimate sacrifice against the French. The fleet's death meant I could never attempt another naval invasion again, so I had to make sure this one worked. I got the mountaineers together to make another push along the coast so we could get more supply and outflank Paris. Unfortunately, the Sindis stopped the mountaineers in Belgium, but I had stretched the French line so much that Paris had a lot fewer men guarding it. Some mountaineers redeployed there, and I pushed from several directions to squeeze the French army out of Paris. Fortunately, the Commune of France's war support was so depleted after years of fighting that they capitulated shortly after. The peace deal happened soon afterwards, and while I didn't take anything, Sweden was super out of pocket by taking Paris from the Kingdom of France. And while it was super funny, I felt like I should probably give that city back to the Kingdom of France. Now, I just had to push into Germany to bring the German exiles back. Despite France falling, there were still a significant amount of Sindhi forces in Germany from Britain, Italy, and the Netherlands. But significant doesn't mean enough because I was still able to bust through the Ardennes forest, and using that breakthrough, I could force the Reds out of Belgium and start trying to cross the Rhine. I made another breakthrough towards Frankfurt, and the lack of French manpower finally started to show with a bunch of gaps in their line. The Sindhi army quickly collapsed in Germany, and I could freely march forward into the remaining German cities until their Sindhi state collapsed. Surprisingly, they capitulated to me, leading to a Turkish-owned Berlin, but we're 100 years too early for that. I felt happy about liberating Germany, but Russia had to be the ultimate buzzkill because of Georgia. Now, I'm gonna be real, it's 1945, it'd take at least 3 years to beat the Moscow Pact, and I'm long done with the content for this Ottoman's path, so I'm just gonna end it here. Casualist Ottomans is certainly a good challenge path, but you're kinda left to find your own fun after you deal with the rebels. I'd still recommend it. It's a fun challenge campaign that should last you till 1941 at least. Hope you guys enjoyed watching this video, and if you did, leave a like or else you'll be abducted and dumped in the Arabian desert. Thank you to my alumni for generously funding my Turkish nationalist ambitions on Patreon. You guys are the real patriots. Please consider subscribing there so I can continue to deliver quality content to your feed. What's the most miserable HOI4 game you ever felt obligated to complete? That's an easy one. The video where I formed Germany as the Baltic Duchy. I was so frustrated trying to figure out a way to set up the game that made the challenge possible. At times, I would literally delete a bunch of AI Germany's equipment and divisions, and a Third Internationale wouldn't even push them. I wanted to quit, but Once you've invested over 10 hours into a HOI4 campaign, it is really hard not to see it through. Anyways, more content to come, so subscribe and I'll see you again soon.